Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Kuf Tzadi Vov Sif Beis, that if someone ate a Dva Issa, if he is mitzaref to Zimun. So we said yesterday that if a person ate something which is Dva Issa, something which is not allowed to eat, even though the Issa is only midrabanon, ein mezamnin alav, ein mevarchen alav. So a person b'mezid ate something which he shouldn't have eaten, so then you don't make a brach on it, not before, not after, and you can't join in the Zimun. So that's in all the details we saw yesterday. So continues the Mechaba, Sif Beis, Im ochal dva issa b'mokum sakona. If he ate this thing in a mokum sakona, then mevarchin olav va'ayin lekam siman reish dalet. So he's stranded on a desert island and he's got nothing to eat, and all there is to eat is lobster and crab. Then he makes a brach on it, and it's a different. Then it's different. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Hay. Va'afilu ochel issa deraisa b'mokum sakana kagoyin b'pnei chayli. The person was sick and he has to have something which is normally is also for him. Va'atam, the reason is kiven the sakanahu hatera ka'achil. He's actually eating something which is allowed. Va'adarabba mitzvah ka'ovid la'tzil nafshay k'dichsiv v'chay bohem v'amru chazal v'chay bohem v'lo sheyamas bohem. You got a question, Yossi? Nope. V'ayin lekaman siman reish dalet. The sham nishna din zeh v'nispoy sham b'siv ches ba'agah dimansuhu le'echol en mevarich. We'll get there in Mitzvah Hashem, but there's an interesting contrast. If you're on a desert island and you're eating the lobster, then you make a bracha. Or if a mokum chayli or something like that, and you've got to eat this thing, the doctors tell you it's v'chay bohem, you've got to eat it, you make a bracha. But if Rachman Islan, you're being force-fed, you're in a captive situation, and you don't want to eat, and they're forcing you to eat, then you don't make a bracha. So what's the chiluk? That we'll get to in Reish Dalet. So eina mevarich in that situation. Afal gav muchruch lechol mipnei sakana. You're in captivity, Rachman Islan, and you don't want to eat, but they're forcing you to eat. So then you don't make a bracha. V'ayin sham Mishnah Berurah. So Mishnah will get there. There's an interesting note in number 7. If you look there, Inyan Zimun, Kosav Alavush, Shuchayev Bezimun. In other words, let's say you've got a chayla, or you've got 3 chaylim, or you've got 3 people stranded on the desert island, and they're all eating Dva Issa, the shellfish, whatever it may be. So the Mechaba says, Mevarchin olav. But what about a Zimun? Can they sit down and make a Zimun on their shellfish meal? So says the footnote 7, well, the Inyan Zimun, Kosav Alavush, Shuchayev Bezimun. וכאין זה כוסף במרוק קציע, שהוא מזמן עמוהם, כיוון שהוא איכל הטה. אך, הם אינם מזמנים עמוי, היו ואסורים במאכולי. In other words, they can't, because the choyle can eat their bread, so therefore he can join the zimun. Albeit, numbers 2 and 3 can't eat the shellfish because they're healthy, or whatever it may be, they can eat, so he can't join them. But since one of the people, the choyle, can eat their bread, then you're okay. However, he says, the Prima Godim says that in a situation where you're eating a Dva Issa, even though you're allowed to because you're a Chayla, or whatever it may be, you don't do Zimun. And he says it's Meduik from the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch, because it says Mevarchin. It doesn't say Mezamnin. V'akaf Chaim, Kosav sheyesh lotzes me'asofik adei shelo yochel oisam anoshim yechid bekviyas, don't eat together, just separate v'lo yischayvu b'zimun. And then he says a very interesting thing. What about 3 people who eat together on Yom Kippur? Do they do a zimun? Right? Nebuch, 3 people, imagine in Schonfeld Square, in an old age home, 3 chaylim they've been told they've got to eat. Do you do a zimun on Yom Kippur? V'chein legabe shleish chaylim she'ochlu yachtav yom kippurim histapik hagodol shlem zaman arbach shema ein roishi busudosem yachad levatal mitzvahs v'nisem. Maybe you shouldn't get together to do the zimun on Yom Kippur, because you're being mevatel the mitzvah v'nisem es nafsho seichem v'afin kva ochlu yachad histapik. But if they went ahead and they ate together, then he's mesupik whether or not they're chayav in zimun, because shema me'ach Hashem mistarim him al bittul mitzvahs v'nisem ein kviyosem chashuv kviyas, because the actual setting is not called a kviyas, because they are distressed that they've got to eat because it's not v'nisem. So it's a sophic whether 3 people do a zimun on Yom Kippur. Okay, let's carry on. Gimel, Sif Gimel. Shloisha she'ochlu ke'echad. 3 people eat together. Echad nizhar mipas ovid kechavim, ve'echad ein lenisa. So one is particular about pasakum not to eat it, and one is okay to eat it. Echad mehem kohen ve'echad chalas. One of them is a kohen, is eating truma. Even though the person who's particular not to eat pasakum cannot join his friend and partake of his food, v'lo Yisraelim kohen, and likewise the Yisrael can't eat from the kohen's food, kiven she'oisa she'eina nizar yochel lechem anizar, since the person who is not particular about pasakum can partake of the guy who is particular, he can have from his food, or so too, v'hakohen Yisrael, the kohen can eat with Yisrael, mitzdarfin. Then it's okay, they can join together. But if you've got a kohen and a non-kohen eating together, and the kohen is eating his chalav, and he's very careful not to eat of pasakum, and the non-kohen is eating pasakum, then they don't join together. In other words, the rule is you need to have at least one person who can eat from the other person's food for it to be mitzdarf in a zimun. But if no one can eat from each other's food, then you've got a problem. So for example, so let's just summarize. So what have we said? You've got 3 people sitting together, and let's say 2 of them have got regular bread, and one of them has got pasakum, and the other 2 don't eat the pasakum. They can join in a zimun, because the person who eats the pasakum is able to eat from the other the other 2 people's food. And so too, you've got Kohen Yisrael, and the Kohen is eating Truma. Even though the Yisrael can't eat from the Kohen, but since the Kohen eat from the Yisrael's food, you're okay. But if you've got a Kohen and Yisrael, for example, and the Kohen's got his Truma, and the Yisrael is eating pasakum, and the Kohen is nizhar on pasakum, he doesn't eat it, so then they can't combine, because the Yisrael can't eat the Kohen's food, the Kohen can't eat the Yisrael's food, so they can't combine. So that's you got to find at least one person who can eat from all the food. Yeah.
The same as the one we just said about someone eating a sakana. So if one of them has got
right,
that he can't eat.
Right. So yeah, exactly. So yeah, afagav yeah.
No, we said you can, no?
Yeah, that's because the person who is makom chayli is able to eat of the other person's food.
If the other one had a different food that they were eating.
Yeah, so then if they couldn't, then they wouldn't. Then they would be able to. Yeah. Okay. Then let's just finish off the machaba. V'huadin says the machaba. You got 3 people who made a neder for whatever reason not to eat from each other, not to get any hana from the other person. Because I'm not allowed to eat from your food because I made a neder not to get any benefit from you. Says the Ramah, when each one is eating their own food. But if they're eating the combined food, which they're all able to access, that would be okay. That would be different. Okay, let's just finish off the Mishnah Berurah. So if in a situation where one person, this is going on Zion, where one person can eat from the other person's food, even though the other person can't eat from the first person's food, then mitzdarf. So this is going later on in the Mechaba, where the Yisrael can't eat from the Kohen's food, because it's Truma, and the Kohen can't eat from the Yisrael's food, because the Yisrael is eating pasakum and the Kohen is not to eat pasakum. So in that situation, Einim Mitzdarfin. Why? Shekol Tziruf Zimun, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sivkot Neches, Eina Ele Kashem Yechodim Nischaber Yachad, Bachilosum Lechol Lechem Echod. There's got to be a common food that everyone can eat. V'kan Kol Echod Nizem Lechem Chaver, and each one, in this situation, can't eat from each other's foods. Now, in here, you've got lots of very interesting situations. If you take a look at number 10, he says, this, even if each person is not eating from the other person's food as a chumrah, not meikadin, v'lo meikadin, hayra ganim Yashav she'enom yechodim yechodim lezamin yachad. Right. So even if it's a chumrah b'alma, even if it's not meikadin. Okay, good. We'll come to some more interesting details. So you got 3 people, and each one made a neder not to benefit from the other one. So that means then you don't make a zimun, because no one can eat from each other's food. Whether each one made a neder from their friend, or I made a neder not to get benefit from Reuven and Shimon, and Reuven and Shimon made a neder not to get benefit from Levi. Either way, they'll call upon him. I can't eat from your food, and you can't eat from mine. So either way, there's no commonality. That's why they're not mitzdarf. But if Reuven and Shimon made a neder not to eat from Levi, and Levi can eat from the others, then you're okay. Vadam mistafrin. Why? Again, the old rule. Because so long as one person can eat from another person's food, and the other person is eating from that food, you've got food which is common to all three of them, then you're good, you're okay. Kosu hapoiskin. Very interesting case. You've got one person eating milk and two people eating bosar. Mitzdarfin. Why? Because the person eating the cheese, he can eat from the bread of the guy eating meat. Even though it's meluchluch in basa, the person maybe has got dirty, meaty hands. It's so long as he washes out his mouth and he rinses his hands and he rinses out his mouth, etc. Then he's okay. And the minhag is that the person eating the cheese, he is going to be the one to eat because the person eating the meat can't eat from the other person's food. Because he's the cause of the zimun. He's the person who is the common factor. He's able to eat from all of them. But if you're eating hard cheese, you can't join together. If a person's eating gvina kasha, then you have to wait your 3 hours or 6 hours, whatever you wait. In the 9 days, fascinating. You're in the 9 days. 9 Nowadays, we're very careful only to have milchik foods in the 9 days. In the 9 days, I'm eating milchik. You're, for example, part of a Sudas mitzvah. I can't join with you because I can't eat your meat. You've got a hetzer of Sudas mitzvah, but I'm not part of this Sudas mitzvah. The only way around it is that if I could eat a bit of your bread before you eat the meat and prevent your bread on me, then you can join. Or we eat a piece of bread which is not meaty or milky. Okay, so a couple of things. What about, he says in 12, there are people who are particular after they've eaten milchik not to have any meat for half an hour. We know the other way around, of course. You have meat, so you can't eat milk for 3 hours, 6 hours, whatever you wait. But based on the Zohar, there are some people who have milchik foods, they don't have meat in the same time. Das Hagon Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Fisher, שלאחר שאוכל חולב אינם מצטרפים לאכול בשר, אלא באופן של חצי שעה מאכילת החולב נצטרפו ואוכלו יחד וגומר הסעודה יחד. Then they don't join together for Zimun purposes unless they wait half an hour where he's able to eat from the other person's food. And furthermore, what about this question? Fascinating. What about you have a situation on Pesach where let's say the three of us are sitting down and you've got hand-baked matzahs and you've got hand-baked matzahs and I've got machine-baked matzahs. So I would be happily to eat from yours, but you're makbid not to have. I remember once being in a Hasidic shul where, of course, they only have hand-baked, and it was like the last Shalosh Shus on Yom, the 8th day of Pesach, and the Gabba announced in Shachris, he says, this afternoon there's no Einig Yom Tov, everyone bring matzah, and he says, and then he added, and only the round ones, right? So they're makbid. So they don't eat machine baked. So what about his starfus over there? So number 13 it says this: V'chein shloisha she'ochlu yachad b'Pesach ve'echol mehem ochel matzahs yad, machine matzahs. V'acherim, they're hand baked. V'acherim mitzvahs mechuna, they eat only machine baked. V'echel matzahs yad magbit shleilechel matzahs mechuna. What do you do? V'acherim einam makbidim v'echel gam matzahs yad. V'adin also or other situations. Echol mehem magbit shleilechel is matzah shloi. Kos v'sefer shuz van hoggers. V'hevi shem matzah came by Godesh Pesach of the Lev Ivri, Shelo Yezamin HaMakbid. You, who are makbid not to eat from mine, you can't do the Zimun, but I can do the Zimun. Same thing. So we can join together because I'm able to eat from yours, so you've got the commonality, and I should be the one to lead benching. Okay? Let's just run dalad. Ein mezamnin al misha achol pachas. You can't do Zimun with someone who had less than a kazais. So the third person has got to have at least a kazais. Okay, say we'll leave it there.